Hi, everyone, and welcome to Believe in Big Ten College Football Playoff Quarterfinal Recap Edition. I'm Tom Hannafin from State of State, a Penn State football show. He is former Indiana Hoosiers wide receiver, currently representing the Big Ten Network and the NFL Network. He is the one and only Rhett Lewis. We're here to talk about all the Big Ten action in the quarterfinals of the College Football Playoff. Ups and downs would be the least of the way we could describe this, but we're going to get into Ohio State's shellacking of Oregon that shocked everybody, and then Penn State taking care of business against Boise State in the quarterfinal. A lot to look forward to with the semifinal upcoming. But before we go any further, I want to give a shout out to our friends at BetOnline. Believe in Big Ten is presented by BetOnline. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting, from the earliest odds to in-game live betting. BetOnline provides you with constant real-time odds and action and the ability to watch the games as they happen, with the largest selection of odds on everything from football to the NBA, college basketball, the NHL, and even UFC. Head to betonline.ag today, and don't forget to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. Believe in Big Ten is presented by BetOnline. The game starts here. We will start with the Rose Bowl, Ohio State versus Oregon, all day on ESPN. The conversation was, this is going to be the rematch of the century. This is going to be so entertaining. What a matchup this should be. Arguably the best matchup of the playoff thus far. Oregon gets smoked by Ohio State. I couldn't believe the way that this game played out, considering their first matchup went the way of Oregon by 1 point. That was at Autzen in Eugene, Oregon. Granted, neutral site. Everything that was looming over this Ohio State program, it felt like maybe they were set up to fail. All the questions about Ryan Day, et cetera. And instead, the potential of this team that everybody thought was there in the summer finally was realized. And it was like a bomb going off in Pasadena. You were on the ground at the Rose Bowl. So envious. What was your perspective, Rhett?
Oh, man. Well, let's just start again with it being such a kick in the pants to know that the best day of the year is day one of 365, because New Year's Day in Pasadena at the Rose Bowl is just, it is a day for college football, and those who appreciate and love it to its core. It just shows off. And I mean, like 70 degrees, sunshine, not a cloud in the sky, an absolutely incredible day as I'm driving there. And I'm looking at it, and then I'm driving through into the parking lot, and there's just all the tailgate scenes that you love about college football. The pageantry and the passion of the fans on both sides, so much red and green. It was a great like color contrast in the stadium and outside the stadium. There's just like so much of this day and that game and that venue that is aesthetically pleasing, and it's just so easy on the eyes. It's just, it was a beautiful thing. And then, I mean, there was the hype of the matchup was real, and it was based on the first matchup, and it was based on how both teams played coming into it, with Ohio State dominating Tennessee coming into it, and Oregon, in that shootout against Penn State in the Big Ten title game. And you're like, all right, here we go. Like, all right, 34-31, something. It was 34-0. I mean, I was as shocked as anybody to see the score show up that way in the first half, right? And obviously, Oregon gets some points on the board before the end of the first half, which makes it feel a little bit better. And they had their moments in the second half where they stopped Ohio State, they scored, and you're like, okay, they stopped them again. And then it kind of, the ebbs and flows kind of ebbed again back into Ohio State's corner. But the thing, Tom, that I was most surprised, maybe surprised isn't the right word, but most taken aback by was how little Oregon's defensive front pressured Will Howard. And really, I mean, like, they were a little bit better against the run, but I mean, not that much better. I was shocked in the way in which that group for Oregon had such minimal impact. Jordan Birch, Derek Harmon, Amari Washington, Tatum Tuioti, Mateo Uiagalelei, like that group did not show up in the way I thought it was, especially against an Ohio State offensive line that has been patchwork for much of this season due to injuries. And so with that, I want to give a shout out to my buddy and former teammate Justin Fry, who is the offensive line coach there at Ohio State. And I got to see him after the game, got to see him share a moment, at the Rose Bowl with his son. It was a really special day for that group. For him, and to be a big piece of the puzzle, because that's what allowed Will Howard to sit back there and just fire for Jeremiah Smith, who was unguardable in this game against Oregon. So there was a lot of that was really surprising to me on that front from Oregon. And then on the other side, Oregon's offensive line got dominated. 8 sacks by the Ohio State defensive front. It was just total domination in the trenches by Ohio State on both sides of the ball.
13 tackles for loss as well for Ohio State. Ohio State prevented Oregon from getting out of the blocks, and that's exactly what you need to do against that offense. I'm so much more impressed by Ohio State's defense than I am by their offense. It's easy to look at the offensive numbers and talk about how gaudy the things were that Jeremiah Smith was doing. The way that Trevion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins finally got going behind what you talked about, a patchwork offensive line. Will Howard, 17 of 26. Is that the greatest line ever? No, but 319 yards and 3 touchdowns. Damn good day. And some of the throws that he made were NFL caliber throws. Not that he hasn't done that, but he just continues to stack solid performance on top of solid performance. And the one thing my co-host Justin King has pointed out a number of times when it comes to Ohio State, and we talk about this patchwork offensive line, yes, they've moved around pieces a lot this season. The pieces they're moving around, not to make the 5-star, 4-star argument, but their personnel is better than everybody else's. So that guy that they're moving around, whatever position it is, he's also really freaking talented. So they are just finding the ways to do it. And offensively, Chip Kelly schemed his way to a huge performance offensively. Oregon had no idea what to do really on either side of the ball to attack Ohio State's defense. And then especially in this respect, Chip Kelly and the Ohio State offense put Oregon in a blender to the point that defensively they looked lost the entire game.
Yeah, I got the chance to talk to Chip Kelly afterwards, after the game, and I was asking him about the play sheet just being on fire up there, the way that he was sending it in. And Will Howard told me after the game, Chip Kelly was in his bag with the play calls. I think just the ways in which they got Jeremiah Smith the football, because it felt like he could win one-on-one whenever they wanted. And I was a little bit surprised that we didn't see Jabbar Muhammad from Oregon on Jeremiah Smith, kind of as much as possible. I thought Muhammad is one of the best corners in the conference this year and in the country. And I guess just for my liking, I didn't get to see that matchup enough. But Jeremiah Smith just absolutely tortured the Oregon secondary. And I would say in particular, in the slot. And then when they got him up making moves on safeties deep, like making those deep, the deep post move or a deep corner, it wasn't going to happen. They were just better. Emeka Egbuka and Jeremiah Smith were just better than anything Oregon could throw at him. And I think that also speaks to the growth that we've seen in Jeremiah Smith, let's just say from the one Oregon matchup to another. He almost looked like an even different player, even better. It's like he'd grown almost a year in that time, and there was just nothing. Will Howard was excellent in this game, but he also he made some clean throws, but he made some throws where he was also like, you know what? I trust the out of my guys to go up and make a play, like the one to Jeremiah Smith on the sideline where there's
flag route
two Oregon two Oregon defenders there, and it's like Jeremiah goes up and makes an incredible play. That's what Will Howard should do. That's what that's what you need to do when you've got players of that caliber talent. So that piece of it, man. And then again, the way I loved when Chip Kelly brought those wideouts down in condensed splits, and you saw Jeremiah Smith in close and you just kind of allowed him an opportunity to work through the mess. And man, it's just so difficult for Oregon to kind of track him through all that in there when he was in tight to the formation, which I thought was, kind of a fun way to use him. And then let's not forget about Ibuka, who had a nice touchdown catch in this game too.
Killer throw by Howard on that one too.
Woo! Yeah, no kidding. So yeah, and now, like, Tom, let's go back to this. You and I talked about this before the Tennessee game. There was no more important factor for Ohio State in that game than starting fast and getting up early. Knowing, that there were 30,000 Tennessee fans in the Horseshoe and that there was maybe some Ohio State fans that weren't totally sold about the product that they were out there cheering for in that game, but to get up early on that team, to showcase some dominance, just flip that script entirely. And that's the same thing that happened in this game. You shell-shocked Oregon. Now, look, they came back and they got out of the shell and they tried to make it a game here, and that's what good teams do. And Dan Lanning's a hell of a coach, and so I kind of had a feeling that they weren't just going to go away quietly. But I'm telling you, that was an onslaught from the start, and that just fueled the confidence for Ohio State, and it is at a fever pitch right now.
In the field that remains for the college football playoff, Notre Dame versus Georgia has been postponed and hasn't occurred yet at the time we're recording this show. Is there anybody playing quarterback better in the college football playoff than Will Howard?
I think Quinn Ewers had some good throws, for Texas. I think he would probably get drafted ahead of Will Howard if Quinn Ewers is to come out. Now, there's a lot of transfer portal talk there.
Not really the crux of my question. Like right now?
Yeah, right now? No, I think through these two games, honestly, Drew Aller has had some big throws too, and he did early in that Boise State game, which we're going to get to here in just a moment. But yeah, I don't know that I disagree. I think I would feel pretty confident saying Will Howard is playing quarterback at a higher level than everybody else right now.
And then last piece here on this Ohio State-Oregon situation. Yeah. Did Ryan Day get the proverbial monkey off his back? And does Ryan Day have more of a Michigan problem than anything else?
I personally, and I know that Ohio State fans will feel very differently, but I think that, on the whole, there's too much emphasis on that game. There's too much emphasis on the outcome of that game at the end of it. It has become, look, rivalries are great, and I love the passion of it. But to have that, determine the next 364 days until you play them again, that's a little bit much for me. And so I think that weighed the loss, from 23 weighed on them until 24. And it played into it felt like it played into the result in 24. They had to be the bigger, tougher, more physical team.
It was definitely a hangover.
And so and now, they kind of were able to push that aside, right? Michigan's not in the playoff. We don't have to worry about anything regarding the team up north. And we could just go play the way that we know we can with the stars that we have, the scheme that we have. We put that all to use. We can be the best team in the country. And right now, Ohio State is the best team in the country. And it was pretty clear about 25 minutes into the game that Ohio State is not just going to beat Oregon, but they are the best team in the country. And at this point, Tom, should win the national title.
And that's my feeling as well coming out of this game. And granted, every game is going to feel different, but it feels like Ohio State is peaking and trending and building momentum at the right time. Yes. And it's something we've talked about in sports for a considerable amount the last 5 to 10 years, it feels like, is that it just doesn't matter what seed you get in or kind of how the regular season goes. If you build momentum at the right time, you're going to get yourself into the places that you want to be. To me, I'd be stunned at this point if Ohio State doesn't win the national championship. They're opening up as a 6-point favorite, according to our friends at Bet Online, ahead of facing Texas in Arlington in the Cotton Bowl in the semifinal. That's going to be on Friday, January 10th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. So home turf advantage for the Longhorns, but quickly, I don't feel that good about the Longhorns after the performance they put up against Arizona State. That felt like two very evenly matched teams there. And the firepower that Ohio State displayed offensively against Oregon and the way they played crushing defense against the Ducks, I worry that game can get out of hand and you could see a blowout in the Cotton Bowl. But we're going to put a pin.
Go ahead. Yeah, I think they let Arizona State hang around. Texas did. And we'll have more on that when we get into our preview conversation here. But yeah, I'm with you on that with Ohio State.
So we're going to put a pin in Ohio State for now. The other quarterfinal matchup within the Big Ten, Penn State, a 6 seed playing 3 seed Boise State. Boise State, the champions of the Mountain West Conference, getting a first round bye. Penn State having beaten SMU in Happy Valley in the first round and looking dominant in that game. Penn State kind of sloppy in this one, even though coming away with 31-14 victory. It was a very solid performance by Penn State's defense. Still some things that were leaky in terms of giving up the pass, but they bottled up Ashton Jeanty. Now, some people can look at the stats and be like, well, he's still at 100 yards of rushing. This is a guy who averages 192 per game. Penn State took away Ashton Jeanty's effect on this offense. Maddox Madsen threw 3 interceptions, which was as many as he threw this entire season. Penn State had a great game plan. They forced 4 turnovers, nearly had 5 of them, and played an outstanding game defensively. However, you now are looking at this saying they will face the winner of Notre Dame and Georgia. Penn State against Boise State. I think it's safe to say that Penn State had far better personnel than Boise State in most categories, but Boise State put up an outstanding fight. I was very impressed by that team. What was your first takeaway from that Penn State-Boise State matchup?
Yeah, I think ultimately this was, again, a battle in the trenches where Penn State should and did dominate, really on both sides, because Penn State's run game was the run game to be reckoned with in this matchup. Katron Allen was incredible. And I know Nick Singleton had some valuable carries in there as well, but Allen had those big time ones, the ones you needed, the ones you had to have, the first down carries, I know he had the one explosive get taken off the board with the Wormley holding call, which was tough. But what do you remember what I told you? Remember what we talked about? You remember that threshold that I gave for Jeanty?
I forget what it was. What was it? Oh, yeah. I think I said under.
If he's under 150, Penn State wins. Mm-hmm. If he's over 150, Penn State is going to be in a dogfight, because then they will have controlled the tempo of the game. They will have controlled the time of possession of the game. They will likely have had some explosive runs. And that is how Boise, plays for a victory in this game. But on the whole, they bottled up. And now he had some fun runs, right, where he's bouncing off tacklers again, like he kind of has all season. But credit to Tom Allen, credit to that Penn State defensive front, even without Abdul Carter for much of this game, which is certainly a big storyline, although we've gotten some posts on social media that are creating some optimism, which I'm sure, Tom, you've seen, and I know we'll get to here in a minute. I thought Keziah Izzard had a good game here on the interior. I thought as you looked at the rest of the front, kind of going back at it, Vanover, I thought, had a nice game too. I think there was just they were sound. And just, kind of scheme sound. And then from a execution standpoint, they did what Tom Allen asked them to do on the whole. And there you go. That's how you keep a team, kind of bottled up in the run game. And there wasn't going to be enough for Boise State through the air to really get this thing done.
No, and it's just not the way Boise State's offense is constructed.
No.
It's more of a power running game with Jeanty, and then they just don't have a sophisticated passing game with Jeanty to continue to make him a threat otherwise. So 30 handoffs played exactly in the way that Penn State wanted to play. Outstanding defensive effort from Penn State. You touched on it. Abdul Carter did not play the second half. It appeared sustaining a left shoulder injury of some kind. It looked like they were maybe trying to wrap his left shoulder. His left arm was hanging by his side. Deny Dennis Sutton, his partner, a defensive end, also went down there in the fourth quarter. Seemed like Dennis Sutton was fine after the game, but James Franklin is notorious for giving zero information. I was like, we hope the guy's going to be fine. He's going to do everything possible. To your point, Abdul Carter posting what I think was a picture of Bane from the Batman comics.
No, I think it was Darth Vader from Star Wars.
That shows how much out of the loop I am with Star Wars.
I'm not. Look, I had to read
whatever it was. Okay? Abdul Carter posting on social media that he's putting in the work to see that he can play in the semifinal, which would be in the Orange Bowl on January 9th in Miami. And it sets up this situation where Drew Aller has a rocky game against Boise State. I don't put that all entirely on Aller. He was running around quite a bit. A lot of credit to Boise State. That defensive line and that defense played a sharp game. That's a tough group, and they belonged in the 12-team college football playoff, Boise State as a whole. But Drew Aller finishes the game 13-25, 171 yards passing, and 3 touchdowns. 3 touchdowns were great, finding Tyler Warren and Omari Evans. Tyler Warren doing Tyler Warren things throughout this game. But Drew Aller, it feels kind of like, I wouldn't describe him as the weakest link of the offense. I would just describe the passing game outside of Tyler Warren as certainly the weakest link. And if you're able to get after Drew Aller and make him uncomfortable, that completion percentage is going to drop to about 50%, like you saw against Boise State. If you're Notre Dame or Georgia, that feels like a really good matchup ultimately for the Orange Bowl, regardless who comes out of New Orleans with the victory. What do you think?
Yeah. Now here's the thing, like some of these throws from Drew were excellent, like big time throws, right? I mean, big time NFL throws. And I know that Drew said he's coming back, but that deadline is still out there for him if he decides to change his mind.
He should come back. I'll say that as someone who follows the team religiously. He should come back. He has work he can still accomplish.
I agree. And so, when I went back, and just kind of looking at, I mean, his, if you look at, the first half performance, you're like, okay, that's where the majority of those throws were coming, right? And he's 10-19, 140 or 10-17, 144 yards, 2 touchdowns in the first half. And like that's what kind of, gave Penn State the ability to withstand, what Boise State was ultimately going to bring to them, which was they were never going to, again, lay down in this game in any way, shape, or form. As you said, a lot of credit certainly goes to Boise there. But what you made Maddox Madsen throw the ball 30 times in the second half.
Not their game.
That was ultimately what it was going to. So Drew, in my opinion, did enough to help win the game. The Penn State defense did their part on the whole against Ashton Jeanty. And then, you had Katron Allen and Tyler Warren, 2 best skill position players for Penn State, without question, out there playing like the stars that they needed to be and that they are. And like, that's the formula. And that was a good formula for Penn State to win this game. And ultimately that's how we get here. Now, look, I think ultimately you love to see, Aller with a completion percentage, more around 60-65 than sub 50. And I think they'll probably get there. They'll probably figure that out a little bit here and maybe recalibrate that a little bit. But ultimately, when you have a quarterback who can make those kinds of wow throws, you're going to be in a position to win a game if you're leading or especially if you're behind.
The positives for Penn State, you've proven that you can stop the run against a team the caliber of Boise State and multiple opponents this season.
So if you see Notre Dame, that's a great place to be.
And Georgia, not the same rushing threat as Notre Dame, I would argue, but with Gunnar Stockton, I think that's going to change the way that Georgia looks. It'll look a little bit closer to the Stetson Bennett offense, I think, and you'll see more play action. You'll see a more consistent diet of the run. And to that point, as someone who follows Penn State football consistently, the play calling from Andy Kotelnicki got away from him in the second and third quarter, gimmick heavy, pass heavy, run the dang ball. You're running the ball at a very high clip. You've been doing that for 3 consecutive games against Oregon, SMU, and now against Boise State. Stick with your bread and butter. You don't have to go to the gadgets and gimmicks all the time. You don't have the ability to do so at wide receiver to really threaten anybody in the next round. But all depends on who comes out of the Sugar Bowl, and Penn State is at least set up for a pretty 50-50 matchup in that respect. So we know in the semifinal, it's going to be Ohio State versus Texas, and that'll be in Arlington. And then on the same time, Penn State is going to be awaiting the winner of Georgia and Notre Dame in Miami in the Orange Bowl. Thank you all so much for joining us here on Believe in Big Ten.